Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
Are you a fan of rock and roll? Does it get your feet tapping and your hands clapping? Then be sure to check out Crypt Rick's Rock and Roll Hour every Friday night, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern and Standard Time on Studio B right here at revolutionradio.com, where we get down and talk all things rock.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters.
Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio!
Tune into Revolution Rainbow. Studio A for Omnium Gatherum, a kaleidoscope of discussion, Thursdays at 4 p.m. and Saturdays at 10 p.m. only at Revolution Radio. Tune into Revolution Radio, Studio A for Omnium Gatherum, a kaleidoscope of discussion, Thursdays at 4 p.m. and Saturdays at 10 p.m. only at Revolution Radio.
The spice extends life. The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital to space travel.
And greetings, Earth Explorers, and welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future, and in here, the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us as we endeavor to treat, cure, and prevent the disease of ignorance. And we are streaming to you live as the voice of the revolution with our good friends at Revolution Radio on freedomslips.org, the #1 listener-supported network in the entire country. We appreciate you guys being with us. The chat room is so full. I can't even mention all the people. It's like, it would take me half the show. So I Rob, good to have you here finally. It's been a while. It's good to see you. Everybody else, honorable mention. We've got a lot to cover tonight. I appreciate you guys being there more than you know. 86 trolls out there. Long time listener. Gramanon, thank you so much. Barbara, thank you for being out there. Let's see. Foxhole, we have Ripid Road is here. All right. Pool Dude and Mad Hat. And it's going to get even more cluttered and energetic over there. It's a great, great venue, Foxhole. We appreciate it on pilled.net. All right, let's get started because we have a lot to cover. I don't even know if I can get it all in. Of course, the biggest story for me, because I live outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, is Ice Baby. Yeah. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol reports they have arrested 200 illegal migrants in Charlotte, North Carolina during the first weekend of its Operation Charlotte's Web. DHS identified 44 of those arrested by name and listed many of the offenses and convictions they are reportedly guilty of. DHS noted that some of the offenses these migrants were tied to included aggravated assault, assault with a dangerous weapon, assault on a police officer, battery, driving under the influence, and hit and run. There are also human trafficking, drug trafficking, larceny. The list goes on and on. And these are not just people finishing concrete and doing roofing and doing agricultural work. These people were identified, they were targeted, they were tracked for weeks, and ICE moved in and took care of it. DHS spokesperson said there's absolutely no excuse to continue allowing criminal illegal aliens to terrorize our American communities, least of all Charlotte. And we have been begging, screaming, screaming for years. I would say at least 4 years we've been screaming for federal forces to come in here and clean up Charlotte. I've been here since right after 9/11, and slowly at first, and then more and more, and then the last, I guess from the second year of the Biden administration on, it's turned to pure shit. You can't walk down the street. You're going to get mugged. You can't park your car. You can't have anything nice in Charlotte. Nothing. These are violent assailants, gang members, repeat offenders who have zero regard for the rule of law in our country. They have been in jail, out of jail, in jail, out of jail because of the Charlotte government, because of Mayor Vi and her city council and her cops and her magistrates. These people go right back out on the street to do whatever it is they're going to do. They are here illegally. They should never have been here in the first place. Under President Trump and Secretary Noem, we are removing the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens from our communities once and for all. Those arrested include 18th Street gang member Manuel Vasquez Gavret, MS-13 gang member Humberto Posada Rodriguez, and Lionel de Jesus. And the list goes on and on. They were charged with aggravated assault, assault with a dangerous weapon, drunk driving, and who they have already been deported at least once before, but they keep coming back. And the city government doesn't do anything about it. I can tell you, I drove my normal 55 miles to work this morning. Actually, to the house, which is now finished, but not finished. There's always things to do. And, it reminded me of COVID traffic. Normally at 7 o'clock in the morning, 485 is packed with cars, 5 lanes wide. Not this morning. Everybody was doing 80, maybe 3 lanes full. 77 was wide open. It was awesome. Why? Because there are 150,000 illegal aliens living in Charlotte, which is only a city of 900,000 people. Think of it. That's over 10%. That's about 12% of this city is chocked full of illegal aliens. They were nowhere to be found today. They're either ran out of the city or they're home hiding, but DHS and ICE is taking care of business. They need to stay here as long as it takes. Americans should be able to live without fear of violent, criminal, illegal aliens hurting them, hurting their families, robbing their neighbors. We are surging DHS law enforcement to Charlotte to ensure Americans are safe and public safety threats are removed. These protesters are absolute idiots. They're absolute idiots out there wanting ICE to leave. ICE is saving our lives. There have been way too many victims of criminal illegal aliens in Charlotte, way more than most cities. President Trump and Secretary Noem have stepped up to protect Americans when sanctuary politicians like Mayor Vi won't. And this is serious business, and we like to see it happening. Yeah, Fab Letty. Okay, 16%. That's about it. Yeah. 16% of the city. That's crazy. And you'll notice if you look at the news, it is not African Americans. There's not black people out there protesting ICE. Black people make up about 33% of the population of Charlotte, twice the national average. We've lived in peace and prosperity for 100 years in this city. It is just a great city. It's clean. It's productive. We have baseball, basketball, soccer, hockey, you name it. It's downtown Charlotte. It's a beautiful city. It's well laid out, and it does a great, great amount of business, but not the last few years. They have descended upon us and are preying upon us. You can't even walk down the sidewalk. The last 3 times that I was in downtown Charlotte for, invitations, a bachelor party and some other stuff that we went to, all 3 times they tried to mug me. I say attempted. It didn't really happen, but they got close to me and begged for money and wanted me to stop at an ATM and get them some cash out. And, I'm a big guy, so it doesn't really happen. But other people, like this other guy that was with me, Mike, had his cell phone stolen. He had to track it down, and they finally found the guy and got the phone back. But he was lucky. He was lucky. He could have just as easily been killed over that phone. That's how it goes in Charlotte. That's been that way for years, and I'm so glad ICE is here. Thank you, President Trump, for finally getting to Charlotte. You should pray that your city is next. I don't know about that. Stanley Mays not being able to speak English should be considered probable cause, because I have a lot of people that I work with, and I speak a little Spanish enough to get by, but I have drywallers and concrete finishers and roofers, and let's see, what else do I have? Oh, yeah, the concrete finishers are just fantastic. I mean, hard-working guys, perfectionists, really, really good. They don't speak English. So what? So what? That's not what they're trying to remove. What they're trying to remove are the criminal aliens, the ones that have been arrested already, the ones that have been in jail, been convicted, have deportation orders. Those are the ones. I know ICE doesn't need a warrant. They just need probable cause. And the protesters are saying, well, you can't have brown skin is not a probable cause. Well, yes, it is. Yes, it is. You can racially profile. Let's be serious about this. We're going to do the job. We're going to do the job. And that's all there is to it. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the FCC. We don't talk about the FCC very much because, frankly, since Barack Obama tried to take over the FCC and Ajit Pai stopped him, there really hasn't been much to talk about with the FCC. But the FCC chairman, Brenda Carr, today did something absolutely amazing. She sent a letter to executives of BBC, NPR, and PBS. And they announced that the agency has launched an investigation into the British public broadcaster's misleading edits of actually criminally plagiaristic edits of President Trump's speech on January 6th. I'm sure you've heard both stories. I'm not going to play them on this program tonight. Don't have time. But suffice it to say that they spliced it together in such a way to make it sound like President Trump was inciting violence against Congress. It never happened. I was there. It never happened. And yet the BBC published it that way and thought, well, we can get away with it. We're the BBC. The letter was written to Tim Davie, who is the Director General of the BBC, Catherine Mayer, the CEO of NPR, and Paul Kerger, the President and CEO of PBS. After the BBC was caught intentionally distorting a speech that President Trump gave in January of 2021. Federal Communications Commission chairman, and it's outstanding to finally see this. It's one thing to have lawyers or the president or the national security advisor say something about when the FCC does it, they own the airwaves. They own the airwaves. All those frequencies that you can dial to on your dial, they own them all. They control them all. And this investigatory letter is maybe not as descriptive as it needs to be, but the piece that they put out is self-explanatory. Carr said that the BBC spliced together one portion of the speech with an entirely separate portion of the speech that came 54 minutes later. Why? Because they wanted Trump to say a certain thing a certain way, and they just edited it until it did. And the crazy thing is that 95% of the people that heard that speech never heard the correction. They never heard the truth. The BBC hid the truth from them. And in doing so, the BBC program depicts President Trump voicing a sentence that, in fact, he never said. FCC chief stated that the misleading edits of the president's speech received widespread condemnation, which they should if he did say that. The 47th president believed that the edits were so damaging, he has sued the BBC. Yeah, and he's seeking up to $5 billion in damages from the public broadcaster. Not 5 million, 5 billion. It's enough to break them, and it should. Davie, as well as BBC CEO of News, Deborah Turnus, said that they will be resigning as a result of the BBC's scandalous edits of Trump's speech. And I don't think they should just be resigned. I think they should actually be put in prison. Ofcom, the United Kingdom's telecom regulator, has called on the BBC to look into the issue. Please look into the issue. See what this FCC chairman is complaining about. Carr said he is independently investigating whether the BBC engaged in misleading and deceptive conduct. No shit. The BBC has stated that it has a number of partnerships with U.S. broadcasters, including PBS and NPR, to distribute BBC programming here in America. That's why we heard about it. I am therefore writing to each of you to determine whether the BBC provided either the video or audio of the spliced speech of NPR, PBS, or any other broadcaster regulated by the FCC for airing in the U.S. And if so, provide the FCC with transcripts and video of any such broadcasts of the relative program. As you may know, broadcasters are regulated by the FCC, have a legal obligation to operate in the public interest. And that means not lying to them, right? It means no deception. The FCC has stated that rigging or slanting the news is a most heinous act against the public interest. And criminal editing is right at the top of that list. He said, I am committed to holding broadcasters accountable to their public interest obligations, and your prompt response will help me aid in that effort. And I think part of that action should be pulling the BBC's license. What? Yes. Oh, yes. I think that you get to that point, the intent and the layers of well, let's just call it the layers of audit and checking to make sure that what is being said is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, even if they are adding their own angle to it, their own opinion to it. And if it's not, then you need to pull their license and make them unable to reach the people. That's my opinion. But it's so nice to see the FCC finally getting involved. All right, what else is going on out there? You remember during the campaign, and I think it was during the early days of the presidency as well, of the Trump presidency, 47, where he said he was going to audit Fort Knox. And anybody else remember that? Am I misremembering that he was saying something about checking Fort Knox to see if the gold was in there? Well, Senator Mike Lee is introducing the Gold Reserve Transparency Act. And he's going to institute the very first audit of U.S. gold holdings in probably 60 years. The bill would open Fort Knox to an audit of everything held by the Federal Reserve, making the results public to the American people. I would watch that live, wouldn't you? We're actually going to Fort Knox to see if the gold is there because maybe somebody stole the gold, Trump said. Tons of gold. Lee's bill delivers on Trump's promise by instituting a long-needed audit. For over 50 years, there has not been a comprehensive audit of America's gold reserves, he said. Americans should know whether their literal national treasure is safe and accurately accounted for. That means passing the Gold Reserve Transparency Act, opening Fort Knox, U.S. Mint facilities, and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York to an audit, and then making the results public. Somebody stole it. We'll find out who, but we need to know that it's stolen. Auditing the Fed became a popular battle cry for Ron Paul. He is delighted to see this bill introduced. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. The Federal Reserve and Treasury should not be permitted to operate in secrecy, especially when it comes to the most important monetary asset on the planet, gold. Paul said in a statement, restoring trust as to America's gold holdings is more important than ever when foreign central banks are scrambling to stockpile gold at incredible rates. U.S. Treasury has long claimed that an audit of the nation's gold reserves is performed every single year. However, the last known comprehensive audits have been almost 60 years ago. The Gold Reserve Transparency Act would mandate a comprehensive and independent audit of every facility housing gold owned by the federal government and a full accounting of all transactions involving America's gold. He said, I applaud Senator Lee. Who is this? The Comptroller General. I applaud Senator Lee for introducing the Gold Reserves Transparency Act. His name is David McIntosh. He's president of Club for Growth. He said, it's high time we have full transparency about our government's financial status. This is a key step in that direction. Of course, if it's gone, or if we fall short, or if it's been replaced with tungsten coated with gold, we should know that too. Our nation's founders understood the need for a stable dollar that conveys accurate price signals. And there's been some talk by pretty smart people about the amount of debt that the United States is carrying relative to the GDP. $37 trillion is about what the world does in a year in business, $37 trillion. It puts us at somewhere around 130% of GDP. It's crazy. Put it in perspective, the Great Depression occurred at about 30%, when the debt was 30% of the GDP. And you know what they did? They didn't pay it off. They did not pay off the national debt. What happened was FDR outlawed the private ownership of gold. And most everybody complied. They turned their gold in for dollars. Everybody converted their gold, which was like $20.67, into cash. And once all the gold was back in hand, the price of the gold was raised to something like $31, about 30%. And in essence, what they did is they reduced the value of the dollar, which reduced the value of the debt, and that's how they paid the debt off. They paid the debt off by crashing the dollar. Well, here we are again, and we have this high debt. And what is the federal government doing? They're moving away from gold again, and they're moving to crypto, right? They're moving to crypto, into other commodities. And then what's going to happen is crypto is going to go insane. Like, what is it now? $95,000 for a Bitcoin. It's going to go to something like $350,000 for a Bitcoin. Well, that's great for the Bitcoin. It's great for people that own Bitcoin. Not so good for everybody else because their dollar collapses. And so what happens is the $37 trillion turns into about $3.70. And that's how they're going to pay the debt off. They're going to crash the dollar. So if you have your money in dollars, you're going to be washed out. If you have your money in precious metals and silver or gold, you're probably going to be okay because those commodities are just going to go up relative to dollars. So I will say that, 10 pounds of gold purchases the same amount of land today as it would in 1850. Right? Gold is the value. Gold is the reserve value. Well, I don't know about JJ. JJ says Roosevelt was a stinking commie. He was not. He was a fascist. Big difference. The difference is that in a fascist government, it's the bureaucracies that are all powerful. The bureaucracies are all powerful. And what it does is it dilutes the power of the executive to the point where, as long as the executive's running the bureaucracies, I guess it's okay. But if the bureaucracies start running things, which is exactly what happened after Truman, Roosevelt was a fascist, Truman was a fascist, and the setup was that it was going to stay that way and operate that way until it got to Jimmy Giveaway Panama Canal Carter. And at that point, Jimmy Carter codified it. He codified it with the SES, a senior executive service. So that fascist core of our government remains to this day. And that is what Trump is at war with right now, is that fascist bureaucracy that is convinced they run the country. And if anybody assaults that, they turn the judicial cartel, that is to say, the district judges, loose on the executive. So they use the justice branch of government against the executive branch of the government, so the cartels, or so the bureaucracies, can maintain their power. That's why we're seeing what we're seeing. And the bottom line is that America's gold hasn't had a credible audit in a long time. We don't know what's there. We know what they tell us, what the bureaucracies tell us, but we know that's probably not true. Even if a credible audit and inventory assay and accounting had been conducted, 20 years ago, it should be an ongoing process. It should be regular. Audits are never a one and done affair. The U.S. government's poor stewardship of America's gold reserves wouldn't hold muster in the private sector for sure. As the economy continues to slide into another Fed-created downturn, it's more important than ever that we know our gold reserves are fully protected and accounted for. John McCardle, who's the executive director of the Campaign for Liberty, said the Federal Reserve and a Treasury have a long history of operating in absolute secrecy, in darkness. And this bill brings us one step closer to accountability. But we'll see. We'll see. These bureaucracies are going to resist this. They're going to resist this because this bill requires a complete audit and inventory of the gold reserves owned by the U.S. within 9 months of enactment. And they'll probably wait 8 months before they even begin it. An assessment of the adequacy of measures for ensuring the physical security of these reserves. A full accounting of any encumbrances related to these reserves, including those arising from leases, swaps, and shorts, and all that bullshit that you see on the gold bullion market that's been going on for, 50, 60 years. You can't trade gold on the stock market. You trade bullion, which is a paper saying that it represents gold. But what if it doesn't? What if it's just a freaking piece of paper? Comprehensive account of all gold reserves in which the U.S. government, including the Federal Reserve, has either a direct or indirect interest, and a publicly available report by the Comptroller General to Congress, and the secrecy of the Treasury within 3 months of completing the audit. And that's well within the Trump presidency, and we'll see what happens, because this bill goes really further than any other bill I've seen in my lifetime. And we'll see what happens. See if it's got good delivery. See if it's got good implementation. We'll see. We'll see. Issue is, I think that the bureaucracies will resist it. They will say, oh, well, sure, we can audit that. But, we've had trouble with these locks, and we've been trying to get them changed out, and we have a contractor that's supposed to come and look at them, and he says no more than 60 days we should be able to have access to all the areas in Fort Knox. They've been locked up for so many years that everybody kind of lost the keys, and so now we have to have all the locks changed. That's going to take a couple months. Watch for it. It'll be a couple months here and a couple months there and a couple months here, and it'll slip out of the news, and the 90 days will turn into 9 months, will turn into 16 months, and then the Trump presidency will be over, and the audit will never have taken place. Watch and see. All right, for some years, and I probably haven't done it in 2 years, but I used to give an Islamic terrorism report every day. How many people were killed by Muslims? What was the method that they were killed? Who got killed? Where were they killed? And I would give those numbers at the beginning of every single program. And after about 2 years, I said, enough of the negativism. I'm still, Islamophobic for sure, but I'm not broadcasting that every single day. Yeah, I have a small cup. Yeah, it's about a 20-ounce cup of orange juice. That's what it is. And now, I'm considering bringing it back. I don't know, because you're not going to hear about it in the news. And I have an inside source, and I can tell you everywhere in the world where Islam is murdering people, and why and how, burning them to death, shooting them, chopping them into little bits. It's insane, and it's every single day. And what Americans need to figure out, what they need to realize, is that we and France and Britain and pretty much all the countries in Europe, except for Poland, no, there's no vodka in it. It's just orange juice. Come on, guys. They have an Islamic problem. They have a problem with Islam. A major survey of the Islamic community in France And before I continue, I will say that my personal opinion, what I have seen, and it's a very professional opinion, is there are three basic types of Muslims. There are the radicals that want to commit all the crime. They believe in Sharia law. They believe in the oppression of women and the abuse of children. They believe in the death of infidels, lying to get whatever they need in order to uh, profess or proselytize their religion. And then there are the Muslims that support them. They give them money, they vote for them, they come out for the demonstrations, they wear the burqas and the hijabs, they conceal their identity and come out in large numbers and holler death to America. They're active haters beyond compare. And then there's the third. And the third, they say nothing. They do nothing. They're good and peaceful people. They go to work every day. They go home. They don't involve themselves in the Islamic jihad against Christianity. But they also don't say anything against the community. They don't come out and stand with the Christians. They don't come out and actually stand for peace or make public statements for peace or say enough. They don't do that. So those are the three types of Muslims. The active ones, the financial supporters, and the apathetic. Those are the three types. And they're having 6-7 children a year. The majority of the Islamic community in France has found that the younger generation of Muslims are far more radical than their predecessors in terms of preferring Sharia law and supporting Islamist organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood. And I would say you need to realize that this is the male side of Islam. If you go to a mosque, women are not there. Women are kept in a separate area. It's the men that participate in Sharia law. It's the men who oppress the women. It's the men who abuse the children. It's the men who believe all unbelievers should die and their personal possessions divided up among them, just like they've always been doing, just like they've done now for 1,400 years. The Institut Français d'Opinion Publique, a leading research polling firm, released this week its annual survey of attitudes among Muslims in France, which it has conducted every year since 1989. And according to the pollster, Muslims aged 15 to 24 are more likely to abide by hardline interpretations of the Quran and support radical groups than their elders, and indeed more than the same age cohort 36 years ago. It's characterized as its findings as worrying. Said they undermine the conventional narrative of secularization supposedly underway among French Muslims, with the results exceeding the most pessimistic estimates. In other words, it's way worse than anyone could imagine. The survey polled 1,005 Muslims drawn from a representative sample of 14,244 people. They found that 57% of the 15 to 24-year-olds believe that Islamic Sharia laws should take precedent over the secular laws of the French Republic, which they saw as being less important. And meanwhile, 42% of the young Muslims said they had sympathy toward radical Islamic groups, compared to 33% of all Muslims in the country and 19% of Muslims way back in 1998. Of the radical Islamist groups to receive support from the younger cohort, the Muslim Brotherhood really received by far the lion's share, with a third of those under the age of 25 backing the group, compared to a quarter of all Muslims in France. Earlier this year, the government released a report from French intelligence services, which accused the Muslim Brotherhood of engaging in a decades-long Western conquest strategy. And the strategy includes stealing, lying, taking over properties, creating Muslim zones, which are no-go zones for French police, and having as many children as possible. And they openly, publicly say on a regular basis, not this year, maybe not 5 years from now, but 10 years from now, our children will be voting, and they will be on every city council. They will be in every MP. It will all be Muslim. There was a report found that the Islamist network placed trained activists in local dating service providers to make sure that Muslims don't date outside of Sharia, job recruiting centers, private schools, a bid to police all aspects of Muslim life, including forced veiling of women. Again, the severe abuse of the privacy and free will of women. Adherence to Ramadan fasting. In other words, if you eat during Ramadan, you'll be beaten, you'll be spanked. And beard wearing among men. No bare faces. The main emanation of the Brotherhood of France, a brotherhood in France, the report said, was mosques. 139 have been identified as being linked to the radical group. It found that the so-called education services provided by the mosques tend to specifically focus on the quest for identity of young Muslims. According to this research, the number of Muslims under 25 attending mosques has risen from 7%, just 7% in 1989, to 40%. 40% this year. And during the same time period, strict Ramadan observance increased from 51% to 83%. Meanwhile, over the past 2 decades, the number of young Muslim women wearing the hijab has surged from 16% to 45%. And they even have popular YouTubes on how to wear the hijab properly, how to wrap it around your face so that men will not be tempted by your beauty. It's all about men. It's all about the protection of men. Cover the body, cover the face, lest a man be tempted. Yeah. In France, the fashion capital of the planet. Heaven forbid that a man should look upon a woman with lust. That's what French fashion is all about. It's all about that. It's all about beautifying the female form. Not under Sharia. Not under Sharia. Faced with this totalitarian ideology that seeks to undermine the fundamental values of our democracy, they want to impose its laws, its customs, its prohibitions upon us, specifically women. The evil has to be tackled at the root. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do? If whatever you're going to do, you need to do it now, because in 10 years, it won't be possible. The fight against Islamist ideologies must be a national cause, which is going to make you an Islamophobe and probably keep you from getting elected. And even if you are elected, they'll probably kill you. No more accommodations, no more renunciations can be tolerated. The steamroller of secularism, of the law, of the affirmation of our values must roll everywhere. And I don't know if I'm going to start reporting on the death and mayhem that Islam perpetrates around the world. I know. I mean, everything in fashion, makeup, hair products, clothing, lingerie, you name it, is to make the woman alluring to the man, right? Right? I mean, if it wasn't for beer and boobs, America would have gone extinct, right? Well, you can't have that anymore. Now it's women only exist for breeding for Islamic men. Serious. And if you've seen some of the videos out there where women and even bystanders take videos of Islamic men accosting women on the streets. You see this culture. It's like, hey, I like the way you look. Please have sex with me right now. And the woman says, get away from me, you creep. No, you don't understand. You don't have the rights. It's our culture. Our culture. I don't care if you're 14. I want it. I want it right now. And so therefore I have to have it. I'm serious. Yeah. That's why rape is so core to their belief system. All right, I brought this up last week. I had a story on it. And I talked about it on Awake Nation on Monday morning with David Zublik on national radio. Y2K. Not Y2K. Why 2K? Why $2,000? Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Tuesday, yesterday, because I brought this up on Monday, $600 billion dumped into the economy in the form of $2,000 in cash is nothing but inflation. It's nothing but inflation. That $2,000 won't last 20 minutes in most people's accounts. It'll hit that account and it'll either be at Amazon. Or it's going to pay off a debt of a credit card. It won't last 20 minutes. And that's $600 billion of pure inflation. That's what I said on Monday. And so yesterday, the next day, because they listened to this program, the next day, Scott Bessent said this, that Americans don't spend the $2,000. Save the $2,000 tariff check rather than spending the money so that we can avoid the inflationary effects that Brooks Agnew spoke about on national radio. Yeah, fat chance, Scott. You need to understand that $600 billion, it doesn't belong to you. It's not yours to give away. You need to take that $600 billion and you need to go to our debtor. You need to go to our debtor and you need to say, here's $600 billion. It's today's money, and I want $1 trillion worth of credit against the debt. I guarantee you'd have 95% support on that. I mean, what would I do with $2,000? Exactly what I just said. I'd either whack down on a trade account or I'd buy something at Amazon and put the rest on a trade account. It would be gone in 20 minutes. I have no business saving money if I'm carrying high interest debt. Same with you. You have no business saving money in the bank when you're carrying high interest debt. You should pay the high interest debt off. And by high interest, I mean 28 to 33% interest, which is what most people pay on credit cards. If you owe $20,000 on credit cards and you have $10,000 in the bank, what's wrong with this picture? What is wrong with this picture? You are bleeding money because you spent tomorrow's money today. You spent tomorrow's money today. So when you get the money, you should pay the debt off. Don't buy new stuff. Oh my God, can you tell that to people? Hell no. I know this because when the COVID stimulus checks were coming out, when the government was shutting everybody down, they said, oh, don't worry about it. We'll send people money. They'll stay home and, we'll flatten the curve. Bullshit. I was consulting at a plastic injection molding plant at the time. And the reason I was consulting there is because they were running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, wide the hell open. You know what they were making? Sea-Doo parts. Like the little motorcycle that you ride on the water, a Sea-Doo. So many people were taking their stimulus checks and buying Sea-Doos that plant was running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They were making more money than they ever made before because people were blowing the money on expensive toys that they would never, ever been able to afford without that stimulus check. Those people couldn't scrape together $500 if their life depended on it. But you give them $2,000? Oh my God, let's go buy a Sea-Doo we've always wanted when we're going to have a ball this summer. And the crazy thing is that about 1.5 million of those people never went back to work. They never went back to work. They're not at work to this day. They lost their jobs in 2021 and 2022 under the Biden administration, and they never returned to the job market. They're still missing. They're still missing from the job market. That's how badly that money destroyed them. I'm not kidding. Scott Bessent made the comments on Tuesday on Brett Baer's program. It came literally 14 hours after I made the announcement on national radio. Maybe we could persuade Americans to save that, because one of the things that's going to happen next year is the start of Trump accounts, to save for kids. Bessent was referring to a House GOP proposal backed by President Trump that would create tax-deferred investment accounts coined Trump accounts for babies born in the U.S. over the next 4 years, starting them each out with $1,000. By the time they reach 18, they could withdraw the money to put toward a down payment on a home, education, to start a small business. If the money is used for other purposes, it will be taxed at a higher rate. People don't care. What do you think people do with 401ks? They save it up for a little while. It gets to about $22,000, $23,000, finally starting to get some interest blood pumping into it. And what do? They pull it out. They don't give a shit about paying the 10% tax penalty. Not a bit. Pay the 10% tax penalty, put that money in my hands and let me spend it. And they do. And that's why the 401k is a completely failed saving system for almost everybody who tries it. Nobody lets it build up to the $1 million or $2 million it was ever designed to be by the time you get to retire. You have your personal savings, you got 401ks, and you got Social Security. It's sort of three legs of a stool that are supposed to balance out your retirement. And what happens? 95% of the people spend their 401k before they ever get there. They're going to have some kind of hardship. They're going to pay off a student loan. They're going to pay off a student loan. They're going to pay off a doctor's bill. They're going to add on to the house. They're going to take a vacation, pay for a funeral. It's going to be gone. They don't care about the tax penalty. We have thousands of dollars for individuals of moderate income, middle income. We are going to pay down debt. We have a lot of money from tariffs. If we didn't have the tariffs, this country would be in serious, serious financial trouble. That's what he said Monday. So as of September 30th, the federal government has generated $195 billion in tariff-related revenue. And then, by the way, that's up 153% from $77 billion in 2024. Almost $30 billion was collected in July by itself. Some economists say sending tariff checks to every U.S. household could risk another bout of inflation, which it most certainly will. It most certainly will. Inflation only happens one way and one way only, and that is when government prints money. When government prints money and gives it away, that's inflation. That's the purest definition of inflation. Stop it. The Tax Foundation, a private, nonpartisan organization, said that while tariffs have undoubtedly raised costs for American firms and consumers, not by much, since Americans and not foreigners ultimately pay the tariff, rebating the revenue to customers would be fiscally irresponsible and also would risk inflation. Exactly what I said. That money was so hard to raise, so hard to raise. It came at the cost of so many people. To blow it by giving it back to the American people, to buy votes with it, is the stupidest damn idea you ever came up with. You need to pay down the debt. Yeah, that's right. K.O. Kelly says, so because stupid people buy Sea-Doos, the rest of us don't get anything. Seems about right. Yeah. Well, because the Biden administration was buying votes. That's what it was all about. In 2022, it was about the midterms. Did it work? No, it did not. No, it did not. Yeah, I'm with you. The internet is a great resource if you have the self-drive to go learn something and do something. By the way, before we go to break in about 2-3 minutes, I'm going to start off the break by saying many of you have bought Ivan and Roxy from me and fenbendazole through my website. Today, a financial tragedy has occurred, not with me, but with the supplier in Japan. I regret to tell people that that 4-year-long relationship has finally come to an end. I don't think I can figure out a way to source Ivan and Roxy and fenbendazole with another source. It was the only source that I had that was outside the country that was able to make these purchases through the Indian manufacturers. They have had some financial trouble, some international financial trouble, and I don't think we're going to be able to continue the service. I will do my best. I will do my best to try to continue it. But right now it looks like I'm going to have to refund all the orders that I have in the bank right now, and I'll have to figure out a way to fulfill the rest. And then that's it. So 4 years was a good run. We made a good small business out of it. Made a little bit of jingle, not much because I was selling wholesale, but that's the way it is. So I hope to change that. Maybe we'll negotiate a little bit more. Maybe he'll have a windfall and be able to stay on his feet, but that's just the way it is. I hate it, but we'll figure out something else to sell. And we'll just continue on. I know if you've placed an order in the last 2-3 days, you're probably going to get a refund. I know it's unfortunate. We saved 58,000 lives over the last 4 years. That's how many people we've shipped to. But, these things are out of my control, and there's really nothing I can do about it. So I'll do my best. I promise you I'll do my best. We'll take a quick break right now, and we'll be right back after this. So please don't go away. More America Free Radio right after this.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Tune in to the Family Industrial Complex podcast here on Revolution Radio, Studio B, every Wednesday, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Get fit, empowered, physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Rooster has crowed out the opening bars of a new day. You've dragged yourself out of bed. You turn on your device. You want to know what's going on in the world. But you're hungry for a topical show that serves up those breakfast headlines just that little bit differently. Do you like your early morning news the way you like your eggs over easy? Served with slathers of salsa-like sass? Do you like those first headlines of the day to deliver a punch as powerful as that first cup of joe? Join Mitchell Bupp at his breakfast table for Revolution in the Morning, where he will digest, dissect, and dismantle those new day's national and global news headlines with razor-sharp relish. Find Mitchell here at revolution.radio every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Studio B.
Through everything, we have to remember that we have more in common than not in common. And to find this common ground, tune in to Conversations with Eagle Flower, Wednesdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio A. Because we come to this table of life to learn in the best possible way and experience this gift of life from our mutual Creator. So let's learn together and build our best future with Conversations with Eagle Flower, Wednesdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Studio A on Revolution Radio.
I will defend myself against their tyranny. Number 3 is my radio broadcast. I'm squarely in front of the public all the time, and they all know what's going on.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
Hello, my name is John Wayne, and I do a broadcast here at freedomslips.com, revolution.radio, called The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
Freedom and fear are at war.
And folks, I assure you, we are in Defense Condition 1. As we journey perilously through this paradigm that we currently reside in, and I ask that you join me every Saturday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
We shall never surrender.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Thanks for hanging in there while we took that short break. Now back to America Free Radio with host Brooks Agnew here at Revolution Radio.
All right. Thank you, Revolution Radio, for that great station identification. Yes, you heard me right before the break. We won't be covering any products tonight because we have no products to sell. The supplier that we had in India has run into financial issues, cannot continue business in this way. I apologize to everybody who's had shipping issues and delivery issues. Believe me, we've tried everything in our power to try to correct it and make it better, but they just wouldn't give us the attention to serve our customers. So that relationship is now being terminated. As you know, businesses in the United States cannot do business directly with India. That just is not possible. They have an embargo against us. It has to go through a foreign source. I don't have another foreign source, so there's really nothing I can do about it. I wish, if I may find another source for the ivermectin, we'll try to keep the price the same as it was. But I don't have a supply for the fenbendazole, and I don't have a supply for the hydroxychloroquine. It's just, 4 years is a long time to run an online business, and we ran it, and we did the best we could. If anybody knows of a source out there for ivermectin that doesn't charge $200 for what we were selling for $83, I would appreciate any contacts that you have. But until further notice, please don't order anymore. I will fix the website where you can't order anymore tonight, and I will refund everybody's money that I have in the bank right now for orders that you made in the last week. Until then, we're doing our very best, and I apologize, but everything is, of course, out of my control, and there's nothing I can do about it. All right, let's talk a little bit about the CIA. I don't want to. By the way, anybody see the series on, I think it's Amazon, or it might be Netflix. No, it's Amazon, called Lioness? It has Zoe Saldana in there, and she stars in it, which she really makes the program. But it's played 2 seasons. They're shooting a third, I understand. But it is so true to form for the CIA. Operations that they've had not only in foreign countries, assassination operations, but also operations that they have run and are running inside the United States. It's crazy. Well, tonight, President Trump authorized the CIA to prepare covert operations inside of Venezuela. It is a pressure campaign, but when the CIA gets involved, people are going to start dying. Now, according to my sources, he signed off on a CIA planning for clandestine measures that officials describe as potential battlefield shaping actions. The paper reported that while the president has not authorized U.S. combat troops on the ground, the CIA has been instructed to develop options that could include sabotage, cyber operations, psychological campaigns, and yes, putting people at room temperature. The authorization comes as the U.S. Navy's largest aircraft carrier, the Gerald R. Ford, has moved into the Caribbean as part of what military planners are calling Operation Southern Spear. It is a buildup, and it is designed to address a Cuban Missile Crisis level threat that Venezuela poses against the United States. And in addition to these covert, and by the way, it's our hemisphere. So stick it up your ass, NATO. Stick it up your ass, your pan-European army. This is our hemisphere, and we will run it the way we see fit. We're going to keep our hemisphere free. Sources report that Trump simultaneously opened new back-channel negotiations with Maduro. He knows how dangerous the CIA is. They floated a proposal in which Maduro would step down after a 2 to 3 year delay. And the White House said, not good enough. Not good enough. You step down by this weekend, and we might consider delaying our plans. If not, we're going ahead. Maduro has signaled privately that American energy companies would gain access to Venezuela's oil wealth as part of any deal, though the White House didn't make any commitments. They basically said, we have access anyway. Trump acknowledged a couple days ago that discussions may be underway, and that means that they're already having conversations with the CIA. Pentagon planners have drafted strike lists targeting Venezuelan drug production facilities and military units loyal to Maduro. Trump held 2 Situation Room meetings. As you know, the Nobel Peace Prize was given to Maduro's opponent. Any CIA covert action would likely precede military strikes. Neither the White House nor the CIA commented on the reported order. Of course, they're not going to. The pressure campaign also concludes non-military elements. The State Department will designate Cartel de los Soles, a terrorist organization, on the 24th of this month, allowing the administration to label wide swaths of Maduro's regime as terrorists and potentially enable additional military authorities, like SEAL teams. Trump has not yet signaled a final end game for Venezuela, but I think it would be democracy and free and open elections. The United States has already carried out 21 attacks on the boats the administration said were smuggling drugs. They killed 83 people, small price to pay to keep the drugs out of our country. Trump publicly cited fentanyl. The Times said Pentagon officials told Congress in private that the vessels were smuggling cocaine. Those strikes conducted without congressional authorization have drawn criticism from Democrats, of course, and of course the judicial cartel. And amid the escalating campaign, the president continues to signal flexibility. He said, "I don't rule out anything." That's what he said yesterday when asked about the possibility of ground forces. He wants to send that message to Maduro: don't mess around. Don't mess around, because you're going to be gone, and you're going to be gone by force. And this kind of goes together with some rioting that has been going on in Mexico. If you paid any attention to this, you've seen any of this, the Mexican riots. See, these kinds of things all fit together. There were thousands of people that rallied across Mexico protesting against the growing crime, corruption, and impunity. It means that government officials committing crimes and nothing happens to them. Imagine that. Imagine that. Demonstrations were organized by members of Generation Z. Saturday, they were attended by people from several age groups, including older activists from opposition parties, as well as supporters of the slain Mayor Carlos Manzo, who was shot dead at a public Day of the Dead event earlier this month. The president of Mexico, Ms. Sheinbaum, was elected to be president in an election cycle where 37 candidates were murdered. Yeah, 37 candidates were assassinated, and Sheinbaum becomes president. So the cartels are running everything from the president's office. Mexico City's Public Safety Secretary Pablo Vasquez said in a news conference that 100 police officers were injured, including 40 who required hospital treatment. 20 civilians were injured. 20 people were arrested. Another 20 were referred for administrative offenses. Most of these people look like just ordinary citizens. According to El Universal, a Mexican news outlet, security forces fired tear gas and threw stones at protesters as they entered the perimeter of the National Palace. With their shields and stones, they physically assaulted young people demonstrating in Zocalo, who ended up injured and assisted by doctors who were marching, and this organization called EROOM, Emergency Rescue and Medical Emergency Squadron. Police officers, after chasing and beating protesters on the Zocalo Plaza, for a few minutes, forced people to leave the area and disperse the last remaining protesters. Yeah, that really goes well in our country when we do that to people. The protest was organized, of course, by Generation Z Mexico. It said in a manifesto circulating on social media that it is nonpartisan and represents Mexican youth that are fed up with violence, corruption, and abuse of power. Earlier in the week, some Gen Z social media influencers said that they no longer backed the Saturday protests, while the mainstream figures like former President Vicente Fox and billionaire Ricardo Salinas Pelegro published messages in support of the protests. Scheinbaum, the Mexican president, has also accused right-wing parties of trying to infiltrate the Gen Z movement and of using bots on the social media to try to increase attendance. In several Asian and African countries this year, members of the Generation Z demographic group have organized protests against inequality, democratic backsliding, and corruption. The largest Gen Z protests took place in Nepal in September, you recall that, following a ban on social media and led to former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli's resignation. It does work. Madagascar, they also had protests that month. They were driven by severe, prolonged water and electricity shortages that exposed wider government failures and corruption. Weeks of unrest culminated in the government's dissolution, forcing President Andry Rajoelina to flee the country last month and triggered a change in leadership. Protests do work if they reach the right volume. Monica Cruz, an AJ Plus reporter in Mexico City, said it was likely that the opposition was behind the protests in the Mexican capital. We are having a hard time believing that this is an organic protest, especially from young people. We don't want to say that Gen Z is a monolith. They are young people in every side of the political spectrum. But there's a lot of young people out there in the streets, and we are thinking that may reflect a sign that this is not really coming from the young people, because we've seen protests here in Mexico City against the genocide in Palestine, for example, and we've seen young people by the thousands marching in the streets. I assume that some of these things are kind of organized and advertised on social media, and they're run by outside organizations. But Scheinbaum, who's been in power a little over a year, about 13 months, she maintains approval ratings above 70% in her first year in office, but she has faced criticism of her security policy due to the 37 murders of political opponents, which include that of Manzo. Manzo was the mayor of Uruapan in I can't pronounce it, Michoacan, who was assassinated November 1st after leading a crusade against drug trafficking gangs in his town. The supporters took to the streets in towns in Michoacan on Saturday. Some also traveled to Mexico City for Saturday's march. The state is dying, said Rosa Maria Avila, a 65-year-old real estate agent who traveled from the town of Patsuano in the Michoacan state. He was killed because he was a man who was sending officers into the mountains to fight delinquents. He had the guts to confront them. That's why he was killed. So it's very corrupt. We're talking, 37 murders in 4 months. Yeah. Michoacan. Okay, Michoacan. Thank you, Captain Super Aids. I needed help with that pronunciation. All right, let's see here. What else I got? Oh, Y2K. Okay, the CIA in Venezuela. What do you think about that? What do you think about the CIA going in and doing their thing. What would you rather see? Would you rather see a straight up military confrontation? Would you rather see sanctions against Venezuela? See, the thing about it is, Venezuela just a very few years ago was the economic powerhouse of South America. They had all the wealth, they had all the power, they had all the oil, they had all the market, they had all the leadership and education. They were rich. They were rich in South America. And Maduro came in and the communists came in and they literally ate all the animals, ate all the seeds, shit in all the wells, and within 6 months the people were eating out of garbage cans. And then they stepped on the people with military force. Anybody who tried to protest was shot. And that's where Venezuela sits today. Now, if you hear Maduro speak, you think, oh, everything's okay. He just wants peace. No. This is all being run from a very high level. Twice Maduro has been elected out of office, but he has refused to leave. Nobel Peace Prize given to his opponent. The whole world is against what Maduro and his criminal organization is doing with Venezuela. What we would like to see is for that criminal operation to leave, for free and open elections to happen again. Yes, Hugo Chavez, right, got them started with communism. But see, you have to understand that the same thing is happening in New York. The same thing is happening in New York. You have this entitlement class people who believe that the government should provide them food, housing, the basics of life, so they can be free to pursue, their life's dream, which is not to have to work every day for a living. Not like you and me. And they just elected a communist as mayor. Now, is anything going to happen because of it? My gut tells me no. My gut tells me that Ma'am Danny is not going to be able to get anything going. That the people of New York, the organizations of New York, the financial strength of New York, and the actual taxpayers of New York are all going to rebel against him. But the fact that the people elected him means that it's being forced in the same direction as Maduro with Venezuela. And that's not the only city. Seattle did the same thing. They elected a woman who lives in her mom's basement. She has never held a job, a full-time job, and she's a straight-up commie. And she believes that the rest of the state of Washington should send all their money to Seattle so that they can distribute it as she sees fit. And the same thing's happening in Oregon. Same thing. 13 counties in Oregon are actively trying to secede from the state of Oregon and to be annexed to the state of Idaho. Well, if it happens, Idaho is going to increase about 26% in size. Oregon is going to take a terrible shot in the pants. Meanwhile, Salem and Portland are the two communist strongholds, have been since the mid-1950s. They're the two communist strongholds. They basically lock down the entire state and they bleed the entire state to feed those two cities. And the rest of the state is sick of it. They're just sick of it. And they've organized the Greater Idaho Movement and they're ready to secede and to become part of Idaho. Now, Congress is going to allow it to happen. Idaho wants it to happen. But according to the Constitution, they have to have the legislature of Oregon agree to it, which can't happen because Portland and Salem have the population to control the entire state. And that they are doing. So these farmers that have been on that land for over 100 years along the Snake River, huge landowners, huge ranches, huge farms, they want out. They want to leave the state of Oregon and they want to take their land with them. And that's these are battle lines that are being drawn inside this country that are very, very, very much like what's going on in Venezuela. Now, I think the CIA can move in and make some targeted targets, let's put it that way. I think that they can take out some of these communist leaders or capture them and bring them to trial in the United States and free the people, because there is leadership there. There is a government in place. They just can't come to power because they don't have the command of the guns. And you can't get the army to say, well, we're not going to follow Maduro's orders. We're going to rebel against that and continue with your orders. That's the same thing as these 6 Democrats that tried to get the U.S. military to defy orders of the president of the United States just because the Democrats say, oh, that's not legal. Yeah, that's right. These 6 Democrats have put their careers and their lives on the line to make a public statement, like social media influencers all, to the American military. When President Trump gives you an order and we tell you that it's illegal, don't obey it. Don't obey it. Be brave. Don't obey it. Well, that is treason. That is an act of sedition. Same thing that happened in Venezuela, same thing that's happening in New York, same thing that's happening in Seattle, Washington. And I'm afraid if nothing's done, it's going to gain some legs. I don't know, Tatanka. Venezuela has no oil refineries. Venezuela's oil is known as Citgo. Everybody's bought Citgo gas here in the United States. Citgo comes from Venezuela. They have refining capabilities everywhere. I don't think that's the issue. The issue is that the petroleum revenue is being confiscated by the Venezuelan government. It's no longer benefiting the people. It is not a resource that the revenue from that resource is being shared with the Venezuelan people. It's no longer being done. It's only being spent out by the Maduro regime in order to maintain power. Cuba, China, Russia, and Russia has openly said, if you keep messing with our gig, which is to protect the Russian people in Ukraine, you keep messing with that. You keep allowing the Ukrainians with American weapons to attack us inside of our territories, and we are going to send weapons to Venezuela, and they're going to use them against you. That's why you see the USS Gerald Ford there. That's why you see the destroyers and the subs and the helicopters. That's why you see the frigates, and that's why you see the CIA. Because if these weapons make their way to Venezuela, even the Russian version of a cruise missile, and the Russians have weapons that we have no defense against whatsoever. Venezuela is just a few minutes away. I mean, few minutes. If you just look at the map, go look at the map right now and see where Venezuela is and see where, the entire southwestern part of the United States all the way to Florida is. It's within minutes of Venezuela. And if they wanted to attack, we have no early warning system. Once those cruise missiles hit the Gulf of America, they might as well hit their targets inside this country. We don't have any onshore early warning system. And those things come across the border at 600 miles an hour, 50 feet off the ground. Nobody's going to see them, especially if they launch at night. Oh, they might hear it, but you're only going to hear it for maybe 3 seconds, 2 seconds, or 3 seconds. And what's somebody going to do? Call 911. Hey, something low and fast just flew over my house. Yeah, what's your name? Where do you live? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, a minute goes by. I'm sorry, a minute goes by. It's 6 miles away. 6 miles a minute. That's across town. That's across town. Within 20 minutes, it's not even where it was. You can't even track it because if it changes course, it's done. There is no radar detection at that altitude. No radar detection. You have to see it literally from the air. You'd have to be in the air and see it, and then maybe you could do something about it. They can't be shot down. That means that once it crosses Alabama, or once it crosses Pensacola, or once it crosses Mississippi, it's going to hit its target 1,200 miles away. It's going to hit its target 1,200 miles away. It's going to hit St. Louis. It's going to hit air bases in Tennessee. It's going, or northern part of Tennessee, Kentucky, Clark Air Force Base or Clark Military Base. It's going to hit its target. There's nothing that can stop it. They cannot be shot down. And if they're nuclear tipped, you got a serious ass problem, man. So what are you going to do after that happens? You're going to go attack Venezuela? No, because they're not Venezuelan weapons. They're Russian weapons. They're Chinese weapons. And what are they trying to do? Well, they're trying to take America down because America is being aggressive, and they need to be taken down 1 or 2 notches. Yes, that's right, Big D 1955. Obama disabled our Southern Early Warning System. It was called the TARS system, the Tethered Array Radar System. It was like a barrage balloon. They were cabled to the ground. They flew at 15,000 feet. They had generators on them, diesel generators that ran radar and sent that signal back down and broadcast it out to early warning systems. And at 15,000 feet, they got a look over the horizon in the Gulf of America, way over. Well, Barack Obama took all that down against the advice of the Air Force, against the protests of the Air Force, and against the contractor that had the contract to keep those things in the air and operating. Barack Obama took them all down. So we don't have any early warning system hanging up over the right there at the coast of the Gulf of America. That's why I'm saying once they launch a cruise missile, once it hits the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America, it's going to hit its target. There's nothing on this planet that can stop it unless you happen to be in the air at the time and see it on the ground. And we don't have that. We don't have jets scrambled like that. We're not able to follow something that's flying 650 miles an hour, 50 feet off the ground. We just don't have that ability. And if you look at what happened in Crimea yesterday, huge attack on oil refineries in Crimea. Crimea's coastline is the source of a enormous shale gas and oil facility. Exxon has developed it. Crimea has been doing fabulously since they became Russian citizens, and Putin was able to restore their water and open up the Kerch Strait Bridge, which is really the eighth wonder of the world, where these people can drive back and forth from Russia to Crimea over the bay of the Black Sea, the Kerch Strait. It's a $2 billion bridge that Putin finished in record time as a promise to the Crimean people for voting to be annexed to Russia. And Crimea has been doing awesome, fabulously, wonderfully, better than they ever have in their entire existence, even when they were part of the Soviet Union. Well, they got attacked. The Ukrainians attacked their refinery and interrupted a lot of that oil and gas refining ability. Big, huge explosion, like city blocks, huge explosion. It pisses Putin off. And Putin has already said, I'm going to move weapons to Venezuela and let them fight their enemies with our weapons. The same as you are sending your weapons to Ukraine and allowing them to fight Russia with your weapons. It seems straight up to me. That's a point of negotiation, but I don't like it because it leaves the United States open to attack, but we can't do that. We cannot attack people in another hemisphere and try to defeat Russia, because I can tell you right now, as God is my witness, there is no earth. There is no earth without a Russia. You can't take a country that's been around for 1,200 years, that is that large, that has that much resources and that motivated of a people, and you can't say, we're going to break you apart and sell you off bit by bit. They will not allow it to happen. Russia will not allow it to happen. So, but that's where we're going. That's where we're trying to go. So, what else is going on as far as energy here in the United States? Well, as I have been saying for a couple of years now, the one thing that keeps America strong and free and cheap is the availability of energy. And of course, we've wasted a lot of money with the Green New scam. And we have not built an effective nuclear power plant in this country in some 35 years. So hot on the heels of news that it's going to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in loans to the nuclear power industry, including one already dispersed loan for $1 billion to restart 3 Mile Island. You heard about that, right? The U.S. government also plans to buy and own as many as 10 brand new nuclear reactors that could be paid for using Japan's $550 billion funding pledge. The Energy Department's chief of staff, his name is Carl Coe, made comments today detailing the unusual arrangement related to the $550 billion in funding for U.S. projects announced by Japan, a strong ally, a very enthusiastic and strong ally. The role of having the government involved in private markets is sacrosanct. You just don't do it, Coe said at an energy conference hosted by the Tennessee Advanced Energy Business Council. But this is a national emergency. Yes, it is. AI is consuming electricity faster than we can make it. That means that business, all these factories within a few miles of my house, they're not going to be able to pull 5, 6 megawatts apiece because it's not available. The announcement sparked speculation, which companies would benefit from the federal government's upcoming purchases. I know that Duke Energy is probably going to be right at the top of the list. It is unclear whether the funding commitments made by Japan, announced last month as part of a trade deal framework with the U.S., will come to fruition. In all, Japan has agreed to invest some $332 billion for energy projects in the United States. That pledge, in addition to Westinghouse's new AP1000 reactors, it's really a new breed of reactor. It's a smaller nuclear reactor, as well as the nuclear power plants, electric transmission projects, and pipelines. Here's a list of the most likely beneficiaries. Cameco, it's a 49% owner of Westinghouse. They along with Brookfield Asset Management, are already coordinating with the U.S. government for building out the only large reactor design currently in discussion. That's the 1,100 megawatt AP1000. The only other large reactor with a partially U.S.-owned design is the boiling water reactor from GE Hitachi. And I have been to one of those reactors before. Very state-of-the-art. The reactor's designs have been marketed for development by GE Vernova for years, but Japan has many of them, while the company has instead focused on the 300 megawatt design and the BWRX 300. Now, BWX technology This company doesn't currently have much involvement in the construction of the AP1000s. They're more designed for the 300 megawatt units. And Mirion Technologies, these are the one leaders in radiation safety, monitoring equipment, etc. FlowServe, while still a comparatively small portion of their overall revenue, FlowServe is the leading provider of critical pumps and valves for nuclear primary and secondary systems. You need to have that to be able to cool. Centrus, they're on the cusp of finally commencing their low enriched uranium, typically used by large commercial reactors like the AP1000. Very coordinated business arrangement. They have multiple pledges for support by South Korea. Additional task orders under the DOE's uranium enrichment programs are also anticipated in the upcoming weeks. I'll keep you posted on those. And then there's Silex Systems. Now, Silex is interesting because they own actually 51% of global laser enrichment. It's a company using lasers to enrich uranium in a test facility in North Carolina. We're using it to neutron bombard uranium to enrich it, and they use the lasers to accelerate the neutrons. They're actively producing hundreds of kilograms of a low energy uranium, a low enrichment uranium for the calendar year at the facility in North Carolina. They have deep integration with the DOE to produce additional quantities of uranium for additional enrichment. Not weapons grade stuff. This is fuel. Let's see. There's UEC, there's URG, and there's quadruple U. And these four major American uranium companies stand to benefit from the federal effort to expand domestic mining of uranium. In other words, we're not going to get the uranium from a foreign country. We're going to originate it ourselves. United States is the only one that can be used for use in nuclear weapons and U.S. Navy reactors. There are now flashing red alerts about a shortage of electricity needed for energy-hungry data centers. We know that energy has to come from nuclear. It's definitely not going to come from green anything. Some of it's going to come from natural gas. Where there are existing pipelines and where there may actually be existing generators that are sitting dormant. And there are numerous ones of these around the country. However, they're limited in size. They usually do 30 or 40 megawatts. They're just like the gas turbines that you see in Idaho. Now, the interesting thing about the gas turbines in Idaho is that they use thermal water. This is water that is already heated in the ground. It comes up through the ground at about 80 or 90 degrees instead of 55 degrees. And you think, oh, well, what's the 35 or 40 degrees worth? Well, it's worth a lot of energy because it doesn't take nearly as much natural gas to make steam out of warm water than it does to make steam out of cold water. So I don't know if they're going to be able to do this in North Carolina or not. We don't have thermal water like that. Trump declared an energy emergency, unlocking new domestic powers to fast track the pipelines. As I was saying, gas is a valuable asset as long as you have a pipeline. When we were drilling wells in Oneida, Tennessee, which branches all the way down, into other states, actually from Kentucky down into Tennessee, Oneida, Tennessee. This is if I can remember right, the Cypress and Monterey formations. If you go way over to Chattanooga, the Monterey formations are relatively close to the surface, 300 to 500 feet. But as you go east over to Oneida, they're at about 2,000 feet. So these are mud rigs that you have to use. And what occurs is once you drill into these, the minimum pressure is about 400 psi, 400 to 750 psi. Yeah, let me tell you something. When that breaks loose, you can hear it for a couple miles, and it's kind of dangerous. But of course, in Oneida, everybody was drilling for oil because where there's gas, there's oil, right? And the issue is that this gas cap, of course, drives oil to a hole like nobody's business. But there ain't no pipeline. There's no pipeline. So all across this ridge, which extends for miles and miles and miles and miles, all these capped wells at 2,000 feet in the Monterey Formation that are sitting with 400 to 700 pounds of pressure on them. No place to go. There's no pipeline. So once the pipeline is built, you can take that gas pressure and you can distribute it pretty easy. And it becomes a great asset, not only to the area that's originating it, but to the areas that receive it, because natural gas is pretty darn cheap. Like, I don't know, 29 cents a gallon or something like that. Really, the cheap, clean burning fuel. So the issue is, of course, that it's been almost 15 years since the U.S. broke ground on a large-scale nuclear power plant that actually came online. The Democrats blocked it. Obama defunded it. Biden stood on it and wouldn't let it go anywhere. But now Trump is finally releasing those funds. Most of America's energy industry wrote off for dead the notoriously expensive projects after Southern Company, the last utility to build a new plant, went $16 billion over budget and 7 years behind schedule building its Vogtle project. But this is because of the regulations and the shifting, the shifting regulatory theater that the U.S. government placed upon them. That's why they had all these cost overruns. Oh, no, we don't want you to do that. We want you to do this. Trust me, I just built a house and I had 16 inspections. Several of them were multiple times, 2 and 3 times, because the inspectors were like crazy about stuff that had nothing to do with building a house or making it safe. It was just the codes. The codes kept shifting and changing. And of course, as luck would have it, I tried to build a house in the toughest county in the entire state. Catawba County is a nightmare to build a house. But it's finished, it's done, the mortgage is done, I'm moving in, and we're finally finished with it. But it did run over budget for me. The AI boom has created new life for the big plants. Obviously, we need a lot more energy to feed the artificial intelligence farms. It is still unclear whether the funding commitments made by Japan announced last month are actually going to come through. We'd like them to come through. They've made the pledge, but that's like, sometimes calling up a charity and say, yes, I pledge $5,000. And they go, wonderful. And they put it up on the board, but you never send the money. You never send the money. You don't get the tax write-off. You never sent the money because you can't spare it. Japan has agreed to invest some $332 billion for energy projects in the United States. They know we need the energy. They know we will pay for it. Westinghouse's new AP1000 reactors are the cat's meow when it comes to these larger reactors. The problem, obviously, I'm worried about it and other people are worried about it. I know it's a great talking point for the Trump administration, but Japan is loaded with debt. Just like we are. They're just loaded with debt. Japan has been in a financial recession for over 20 years. 20 years. And they've even tried printing yen to get out of it. And what a disaster. What a disaster. That's one of the reasons why I can't sell ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine anymore. Because the yen exchange put my Japanese pharmacy in financial lurch and put them in a lurch. And so we've had to change banks half a dozen times, and we're now currently doing business to the country of Laos like crazy. And you send dollars to Laos, you need to know that wires coming in, because a few hours later, they're going to convert it to Laotian money, and you can't convert it back to dollars. let me tell you, it's just crazy. That's why I'm saying a lot of these forces are beyond my control. There's nothing I can do about it. We lost so much. I can't even begin to describe to you how much money we've lost because of these exchange rates. it's criminal. It's just criminal what they've done. But that's what Japan is dealing with. And when we're talking about this much money, there's this much risk, okay? Japan's sovereign debt and chronic budget deficits is Japan doesn't have the money to make a $336 billion commitment. That's what's got me worried, right? That's why I don't think Trump should even announce that Japan made the commitment, because I don't think they can come through with it. I think they're using Tokyo as a smokescreen for publicity, and they're overlooking the money exchange problems. The actual funds, we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars here, are probably going to come from Uncle Sam's own treasury in the coming years, not from Japan. The Energy Department didn't immediately respond to a Bloomberg request for more details, but Mr. Koh, in his remarks at the conference, said lots of details remain to be decided, but expressed confidence the nuclear reactors would come through. Obviously, there's money to be made there. Obviously, it's got great national security interests for it to come through, but who's going to pay for it and how? Japan is making, grandiose commitments. I just don't think they can keep up with them. And I think there are some decisions to be made. There are some decisions to be made. They could call me up. Now, admittedly, we're not talking about billions. We're talking about substantially less money than that here at America Free Radio. But they can talk to me, and I will tell them what 4 years of doing business this way has ended up with. And it's not helping anybody. I just hope it doesn't pull me under, but I don't think it will. But the point is that it's a very good business model. We've been running it for 4 years. We've saved almost 60,000 lives, and I would like to continue doing so. I would really like to continue doing so. But obviously, under this business environment, it isn't going to happen. So if you're trying to order ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine tonight, I'm just going to refund your money. As soon as I get to the website, I'm going to take care of it. You're not going to be able to buy anymore until further notice, until we figure this out. Now, I was this way when India Post did the embargo against the U.S. We had a great relationship with India Post. We shipped millions of dollars worth of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, millions. And then all of a sudden, India Post said, that's it. Trade embargo against the U.S. We're not shipping to the U.S. anymore. Well, that was a shock. We were out of business overnight, but we rerouted everything through Dubai. And I know that if all those people that have bought since then felt the difference immediately, because the shipping performance went in the shitter. We had 100% delivery satisfaction under India Post, and we dropped to about 88%, literally 12% of our orders, and sometimes it was even worse than that. 12% of our orders did not arrive on time. That's not the type of business I like doing. So we put a lot of pressure on them. We called them names. We withheld money. We did all kinds of stuff, and it's just not going to be fixed. So we're doing our best. I know one thing. I have a great customer base, a great repeat customer base, and they want to buy again and again and again. And we're keeping people alive right now from cancer and all kinds of things. And it breaks my heart that we're not able to ship to them anymore. And I wish there was something I could do about it. But I'm not going to Japan to fix this face-to-face. So this is where we're at. Cats. Let's talk about cats for a second. I have cats. Well, I have cats. They think I don't have them. Having a cat as a pet could potentially double a person's risk of, I know what you're thinking, like fleas. No, schizophrenia. Schizophrenia-related conditions. It's true. It's an analysis of 17 different studies. Psychiatrist John McGrath and colleagues at the Queensland Centre for Mental Health Research in Australia looked at papers published over the last 44 years in 11 countries, and they found a significant positive association between broadly defined cat ownership and an increased risk of schizophrenia. Yeah, and as it turns out, it is a bug that the cats carry. This idea that cat ownership could be linked to schizophrenia was first proposed in 1995 with an exposure to a parasite. It's a parasite called Toxoplasma gondii. But the research so far has put forth mixed conclusions. The studies found that being around cats during childhood might make a person more likely to develop schizophrenia. Toxoplasmosis is only known to reproduce in cats, but it can be spread to humans through intermediate hosts. Some papers also link cat exposure to higher scores on scales that measured traits related to schizophrenia, which also affects a person's thoughts, feelings, behaviors, psychotic-like experiences. Where do you think these cat ladies get their schizophrenia from? Have you seen them, these Karens? Maybe it's the cats. McGrath and his team say there's a need for a thorough review, analysis on the research on these topics. The parasite is a mostly harmless parasite that can be transmitted through undercooked meat or contaminated water. It can also be transmitted through an infected cat's poop. If you're the one that cleans out the litter box, you could be exposed. Estimates suggest that this parasite infects about 40 million people in the U.S., typically without any symptoms. Meanwhile, researchers keep finding more strange effects that these infections might have. The parasite has been linked to personality changes, the emergence of psychotic symptoms, some neurological disorders, and that's pretty crazy. After adjusting for covariates, we found that individuals exposed to cats had approximately twice the odds of developing schizophrenia. And there are some important things to keep in mind, like the fact that 15 of the 17 studies were case-controlled studies. This kind of research can't show cause and effect, and it often doesn't account for factors that may have affected both exposure and the outcome. It's just kind of interesting. Before we can make any firm interpretations, the researchers reiterate that we need better and broader research. There are plenty of cats out there, guys, plenty of cats. There's a need for more high-quality studies based on large representative samples to better understand cat ownership as a candidate risk-modifying behavior for mental disorders. My name is Brooks Agnew, and this has been America Free Radio. I've been your host for the last 2 hours. And I appreciate you guys being here. Please go out and look for the good in others and help it to grow a little bit every day. And before long, you will have saved the planet. That's how it's done. Don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter, and we will see you on Sunday night. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Revolution